It's like, what were you doing with my drapes? The drapes that were hanging in the apartment. I never got the answer to that. Hi, this is Kari from Sky Properties. Today in Ask Kari, we're going to talk about eviction and non-renewals. So I have an on-site manager that unfortunately rented to a tenant who looked great on paper, but his gut told him maybe not so good, didn't follow that feeling, and decided to go with what was on paper because it seemed more logical. And I totally get that. I've done it myself. However, that tenant he rented to that is a problem happens to live exactly upstairs from him. And of course, it's up front and center in his life, which makes not only where you live difficult, but doing your job difficult. So that is a situation where the manager is directly involved. And of course, that is good on one hand because your manager is going to show up and testify. But if that were above just a regular tenant, more than likely that tenant would never show up and testify. And so getting them out becomes extremely hard. In California real estate law, it's almost impossible in a rent-controlled area to evict a tenant. You almost have to have dynamite. You just can't get them out. You could be stuck with them for a very long time. So it's harder. It's become harder and harder to evict a tenant in California. There is one way to go around it, and that's to give your tenant on a lease a 30-day, I prefer a 60-day notice to let them know you're not going to be renewing their lease. So what you're going to give that tenant is a notice of non-renewal, and you're going to try and give that to them at least 60 days ahead of time. I think the law actually says it's 30, but as someone who has moved before, I think it's just a nice idea to give 60 days. It may not be the letter of the law, but I also try to return security deposits in 14 days instead of 21 because it's the right thing to do. If you give them the notice of non-renewal and they don't move out, that could turn into an eviction. But you know, for the most part, we rent to people with really good credit. They look good on paper and they don't want that paper trail to look bad, so likely they'll move out. You know, another reason you might want to wait till 30 days is if you're worried that if you give them a non-renewal, they don't pay rent. I would say that's a valid concern, and I would say that maybe you want to give them the notice to move after they've paid and the rent is cleared on the 60 days prior. So maybe you serve that notice 45 days out instead of 60.